first off, I wanted to jump right into the latest release hit song, which you described as, um, quote, a boomer who doesn't have any songs with a million plays, says he doesn't need a hit song, but this song is hooky and catchy. First question is, all right, how much of this is autobiographical?
Um, all of it. I mean, people get their inspiration from themselves for the most part. So,
Right.
yeah, it's pretty much all.
Right. Um, and but it is hooky and catchy, and it's got all of these great elements to it. And so I'm wondering, all right, how did this song come about? I'm always curious how much, for especially with this one, was it inspiration versus perspiration? Was it, oh, the muse whispered in your ear, or it was just work going after it, after it, after it?
All of my songs are inspirations. They
Oh,
start with a hook or a line or even an idea that I need to form into something that has some rhythm to it or has some a melody to it. Has a bounce to it, as I call it. You know,
hmm.
for me, it all starts that way. I mean, I would say there's nothing else more common in my songwriting than that. I don't sit down and purpose to write a song.
Hmm.
Down to capture with that idea before it's gone is what I do, and that idea either mushrooms into something usable or it goes in the trash.
Hmm.
it, it, but this one was one of those. I just I know that there are a lot of people out there and that are my age that have been doing it a long time, and it's like I'm probably never going to get a hit song, especially since there's 60 to 100,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every day. There's just too much cacophony going on. So,
Yeah.
well, do I really need that? What happens if I were to hit that? I might be past the age where that's important to me anymore. And so I was like, well, there's a nugget for a song because I know there's lots of guys like me out there that might feel the same way. So let me catch it. And then of course there was a melody to it that I thought fit pretty well, and then the rest just kind of came together. I mean, let me back up. It's
Okay.
not all inspiration. I mean, there is some perspiration to put it all together, but the seed is not perspiration.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, I've talked to the enough musicians to really realize, okay, it's not like in the movies where you just get an idea and then suddenly it's on stage with the lights and everything, and that there's, even once you get a good idea, number one, you have to have built up that ability as a songwriter over time to be able to, okay, I can take this idea and turn it into something, and you have to have a certain skill set developed for that. But also there's always this little, nothing just comes out perfect. There's always got to be some sort of tweaking and such like that.
Right.
But I'm wondering, does it get easier over time?
Um, I don't know that the ideas themselves get easier. What gets easier, at least from my experience, is that the tools that you have in order to do that become more. And what I mean by that, I always use the analogy because I'm a boomer. Is that remember those that box of crayons that had only 8 colors in it? And when you were a kid, you said, "Oh, I got 8 colors. I can draw whatever I want." Well, when I discovered there was a box with 64 crayons in it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this just this by an order of magnitude or more increases the things I can create." Well, when you go in the music realm from major and minor chords and pop songs to learning more jazz stuff and how the intervals work within the chords and how to move melodies within chords, suddenly you have a box of more than 64 crayons, and then when you hear the melody run, now you can say, well, I could use this chord progression, or I could use this other chord progression that kind of pushes it more toward funk or pushes it more toward jazz or goes straight up rock or whatever. That makes it a bit e- easier is the hard way to say it. It just gives you more options, and
Yeah.
so that's really where the growth comes.
Yeah.
I know a lot of songwriters that I don't want to say it like that because that sounds demeaning, and I don't mean it. There's a lot of songs out there with three and four chords, and they're all major and minor chords, and that's great. And they're three chords in the truth, like Johnny Cash used to say. I get it. That has a place, but for me, that's not as intriguing as creating a song that's got real compositional movement in it. Even if the listener doesn't recognize it per se, you don't, when you buy a mattress, you don't know everything that goes in that mattress, but you can tell when there's quality in it versus when it's not. You can just feel it. You can feel it. It's kind of like that. And I like the challenge of making, like I said, melody run through the chords and have a nice bridge and have a point counterpoint, sometimes have some spoken word, lots of different things. I like to do all that stuff. And so that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. The whole idea of you're influencing the listener without them being conscious of
Yeah,
all that's going on necessarily.
that's what
Um, I guess another way to put it is like, okay, if it's a really good entree that a chef created, you don't know everything that's going into it. But you sense it, you feel it, you taste it.
you can tell.
Um,
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy, actually.
and it's funny because I do come across, musicians like yourself that are realizing the value of of even though the audience doesn't catch it, they're feeling it. I've done some interviews with Ben Caesar, who's the drummer for Brad Paisley, and his drumming has really evolved, fantastically over the years. And he does all these really cool ghost notes and things like that. And I asked him about, well, what about like when you guys are playing these huge amphitheaters, because it's the sound is good, but not that good that you can, and his thing is, well, number one, that's not my problem. I'm still going to put in the ghost notes. And two, he and other drummers have said, he's like, the audience may not hear it, but he's like, the other musicians hear it, and it kind of influences the way that they play, and thus influences the crowd as
which
well.
which
Yeah.
makes elevates the whole product. I think it
Yeah.
does. If the musicians are really feeling it on stage, the whole thing gets elevated. And when it gets elevated, you play better. When you play better, the fans dig it more. When the fans dig it more, you get that chemistry back and you play better, and so on and so on.
Right.
It really is the one thing I explain to people in the audience. A lot of times I'll say it over the mic, but I'll explain it to people after the show or whatever. I said, when you guys are enjoying it, when you're there giving us back the energy, that's tangible. And I can feel that. And if I can feel it, I suddenly play better. And when I play better, you get a better product. So
Mm-hmm.
if you participate just in that way, you get more than you would have gotten if you just stood there with your arms folded saying, go ahead, impress me. You know, you get more, your choice.
Yeah. Right. And that's cool to hear, actually, from the perspective of a fan. Um, Especially because you guys have played some large, venues. I know you've done Coca Booth here in Cary, which has this vast expanse of lawn. It's a beautiful theater, but it reaches decently far back. And I've been that guy sitting at the back of the amphitheater sometimes, and watching. And so it's a fascinating idea to think, all right, that person way up there on the stage is somehow feeling what's happening way back here, and it's not just about the people they can see in the first few rows.
It's a fact. It's a fact. Yeah, I've done Coca Booth 10 times now on
Wow.
the stage. In fact, my first opening act show ever was with Styx on
Oh.
Coca Booth stage. And then it was, I will never forget it because, I'm certainly really nervous at that point. But when I stepped out on that stage and we struck the first few notes and I got past the stage fright of, playing the first song, hoping I don't shank something,
Yeah.
then I can already feel it. I can already feel they are interested in me. They are interested in hearing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that starts that chemistry. It really does.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
mentioned I mentioned that in the hit song. I mentioned that feel the tangible chemistry from the folks in the room. It's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting back to hit song, it's this fascinating thing where it's like uh, I'm trying to think of other songs that have even done anything like this, but you're both kind of, I don't want to say criticizing, but making fun of the current situation of the music business, and these ideas, but you're also embracing it as well. Um, because again, it's the, oh, I don't need a hit song, but he's writing a hit song.
Yes.
Um,
Irony is what
and
fascinated me by that, how that came together.
but it's cool because you walk the line, because was there ever a pull to go just one way or the other? I mean, because you'd think it would just be like, oh, I'm ticked the way the things are now, and it'd just be a downer song or overly optimistic, but I don't know, how does one write with the intention of, I'm gonna stay right in the middle and have both of these ideas going at the same time?
I all I can say is, as it was coming together, I was enjoying the irony of that, of the whole
Hmm.
thing, two diametrically opposed situations. I can put them all together, and in the end of the day, what I'm hopeful is that people not only enjoy how the song is constructed, because like I mentioned before, I really enjoy that, but also if they listen to the lyrics. I mean, you pointed it out in the title track when you listen to that as well. But I'm trying to say something. It's
Yeah.
not, hey, I want to hook up later, and oh, you look great, and all, that subject matter has been well trodden. I'm trying to do other things that inspire me, and hopefully, if it inspires me, then it comes across as honest and genuine, and it inspires others, and that's really
Yeah.
where I'm. I'm not a love song writer. I don't do that. I have done it, but it's not really. I can't find a single theme that hadn't already been trampled,
Yeah.
by. I don't think I can do it better. But if I can find a subject that's more unique and less traveled, then I think I can, do something with it. And that's kind of where this came from. The whole idea of, I don't think I'll get a hit song. I really kind of don't need one anymore. So let's write a song that's really poppy and hooky, and what it might be a hit song, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Everybody
Also,
I heard it in the beginning was like, "That's hilarious."
all right, yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah, I kind of got amused by it.
Um, and two thoughts came out of that one. Number one, gosh, I guess it was almost a year ago. I did an interview with the bassist Billy Sheehan,
Oh
and
yeah,
he has this project called Talus. They've only done a couple albums, but they just released the second one. But they had a rule: if writing songs, it can't include the words "love," "baby," and there was some other. It's like, because all right, that's been done to death. So
I think I kind
uh,
of have that. Oh, I didn't know I had that rule. I think I have that rule.
right. And then the other thing is, because you talk about, it's kind of sly, what you pull off. And the other thing it makes me reminds me of is, there's an Elvis Costello song called "This Is Hell," um, and it's this cheery tune, and it's slow, but it's catchy. But then it's only after you've been hearing it for a couple times that you listen to the lyrics, you're like, oh my god, what is he saying?
Really
And
dark.
yeah, and I would put yours in the same category. The first thing that catches you is the melody and the rhythm, and and the hook, of it all. But then it's like, oh wow, he's singing, something so atypical for this style.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge Elvis Costello fan.
Oh, okay.
He mentioned in the same sentence gave me goosebumps. Because I'm a huge fan of his. His songwriting is some of the most clever, well constructed. Like I said, um, uh, kind of looks like this, but ends up being like this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
and I love that stuff, and he's great. And so yeah, I have a song off of the fourth album we did called All In, and the song is called "Tell Me I'm Wrong," and it's basically about a guy who is seeing all the signs that, man, this relationship is not good, but I really want it to be good, so I'm just going to ignore it. And the conversation he's having with his lady is, please tell me I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this, please tell me I'm wrong. Well, I got the musically, that song was compared to an Elvis Costello Watching the Detective song. And
Hmm.
oh my God, you hit it, man. When he said that, I was like, I hit the mark. What a great comparison from me, from my perspective. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally see that. The other one that brings up to mind, and I didn't get this until I read an interview with him. He talked about it. He also had a song on the same album as the other track called "Just About Glad," and it's a really, I don't know. And again, he says that his fans would get the joke, but I didn't until I read the interview. And basically, they did it in the style of the Faces, Rod Stewart's original band, and they're making fun of the fact that like it's catchy and everything, and the Faces always wrote these songs about scoring with women, but his whole song is, I'm glad that we didn't do anything together, and so
Huh, interesting. Then see, I'm gonna have to go dig because I'm
you're
not
right, yeah.
familiar. Do some research on that one.
But that also makes me wonder about how much work goes into your lyric writing, because it this is not the easy throwaway lines. And it's like, what's your personal struggle with? Okay, this has to. I'm trying to convey something very complex, but it also has to be singable.
Yeah. You have to jam in songwriting, you have to jam a lot of information into every word so that so that there are few enough words so that you can make them rhythmic and make them work. That's one of the things that I work at as a songwriter. It's like you can't waste a word. If you want to
Mm.
get a lot of meaning in and you add a lot of color to the picture that you're painting, every stroke, every word has to have meaning that contributes to the song. There's nothing wasted. And
Mm.
so when I do that, it has to boil down. I when I get the idea, at least I know for a hit song, I had to boil it down a lot. I had to rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it and make it come down to where it worked rhythmically and melodically as well. Rhythm's a big deal for me because my band is kind of a funk band. It's kind of a funk rock pop band. I don't do just strumming an acoustic guitar. I value the rhythm too. If you listen to all of our songs, you'll hear some magical stuff. There's a guy that I work with, Chris Conley, who has helped me craft the arrangements for many of my songs. And
Mm.
a lot of it comes down to, he's feeling, he'll say, this is feeling like a particular style. I'll just pull something out of the hat, like "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" from Tears for Fears.
Cheers,
Well, I
yeah.
wrote a song I did not think of that in the beginning, but I showed him the chords and how it was going and the melody line. I'd written the melody line. There's no lyrics to it, and he's like, you know, if I put that shuffle that's in that song in there, that works really well. I said, well, you can't plagiarize it, but you can hit at it. And
Yeah.
so, and he did. And if you go listen to that, that one's on our fifth album. I mean, our fourth album, None the Worse for Wear. But it definitely the rhythm was very important to me in that, and it is in a lot of songs.
Yeah.
So it is. My point is it's not just a song that's got great lyrics and some chords. It's I think of it as writing bass lines and having particular rhythm style changes and all that stuff comes together. It really is. All that stuff goes together in the perspiration part of what you mentioned earlier. You know.
Yeah. And well, the other analogy that struck me when listening to hit song especially was the sound wise. It's, to me, it struck me it's very similar to kind of a Steely Dan kind of tune, in the sense that there you can hear the jazz elements to it, but it is a rock song, but it's I don't know, I never know how to describe Steely Dan to someone. um so my question is, how do you take something as complex as all of that, those jazzy elements, but make it catchy, for lack of a better term, put it into a package that is so easy for people to get.
Well, I mean, that's where I live. I mean, my style has been compared to Steely Dan more times than I can count. And it's not because I have a Rolodex of studio cats or I have a 6-piece horn section. It's more about the compositions. And really that's kind of where that's just how I roll, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
Um, I recognize that, you know, songs, better way to say this. I know I need to say what I want to say in 3.5 minutes.
Hmm.
And what I want to say is not only the lyric part, but it's also the musical element of, you know, the construction of a song and how long I can hold a listener. I just I don't subscribe to a 6-minute song. You can't hold I can't hold my attention that long. So it just, I don't know how to answer your question other than just to say that's how it works for me. It's
Okay.
just I hear how it should go, and it turns out that way.
Yeah. And also along the lines of contradictions that work well together, the solo in Hit Song, the guitar solo, there's a lot going on. It's very busy, and yet it's not one of those slap you in the face kind of solos. It's um I don't know. It keeps the restrained mood, I guess, of the song, for lack of a better term. It's not aggressive, overly aggressive, but um, and so I'm wondering how you pulled that off, where it's like, oh, there's so much going on, but it's still a relaxed vibe.
Um, I don't know that that was the intent. I definitely heard when the spot for the solo was created. I heard, you know, that it wasn't very long. It's not going to be a very long solo. If you listen to all my songs, I'm not a big guitar solo guy. I use the guitar solo as a tool as a crayon, if you will, as my earlier example. It's just one crayon. You
Yeah.
know, it's not the whole over. It's not the focus of the piece.
Yeah.
It, so it needs to counterpoint what's going on in the rest of the song. It needs to make a statement, and then it needs to get out. So I mean, then it comes down to style as far as what I want to do. Do I want to do a lot of bendy notes, or do I want to do hammer-ons like is in that song, or you know, and do some dyad slide ups and things like that. Those are all, again, it's tools that you have that
Hmm.
over the years, and you say, oh, okay, well, I can, you know, use this tool. You know, if you only have a few wrenches and a couple of screwdrivers, you're limited to what you can do. But if you have a whole tool chest full of, you know, 8 drawers full of all kinds of stuff, well, then you have more choices, and you look through it and you go, ah, this would work great. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
it comes to developing those tools, and those tools get developed over not only years of doing it, but years of playing with guys that are inspirational and great. And I've been very fortunate to play with a bunch of people like that.
Hmm.
You know, so that I don't know that I answered your question other than to say it's part of the toolkit, and I just happen to select that tool that for that particular song.
Right.
I
Right.
don't gravitate to the same thing in every song.
Yeah.
So
And lately, I've been fascinated with guitar players, different guitar players' tones, and there's more and more. At least I'm getting better at being able to detect a certain kind of tone, a certain signature, and I'm wondering how long it took you to get to the point where you're like, okay, this is me.
it took a while. It took a while. I learned a lot from actually non-guitar players, you know, keyboard players and saxophone players and that sort of thing. I early on I did a tour with James Brown's elderly, now he's passed away, saxophone player St. Clair Pinckney. He was part of the 3-piece horn section that James Brown toured around with for years and years and years. Anyway, I did a tour with him, and he had a jazz influence. He was kind of like smooth jazz before it was really smooth jazz. It was
Hmm.
back this in the early '80s, and his tone of how he approached the saxophone when given this chance to be a spotlight guy on his own band rather than being part of a horn section, you know, buried in James Brown's band. Well, his tone was pretty fascinating to me, and I tried to emulate it a little bit, mimic it. Well, obviously, you know, that had an influence. Um, keyboard players. I've heard them do runs and, and solos and stuff. And although I don't do the synthesizer thing, I don't really like that very much, but the styles are still there. And so I learned from, I have my own guitar heroes. Too many to name. But I really like the old tube amp, very little effects on it, a little bit of a overdrive pedal and maybe a little bit of delay, and I do some Leslie swirling stuff.
You mean the Leslie amplifier?
Well, I have a Leslie effect that
Okay.
Leslie swirling pedal, kind of like the organ players use. Greg Allman was a big Leslie player, lots of all. I use that for my style, but basically, a classic hand wired, Fender style guitar amp, not a whole lot of overdrive in it, and then I'll be able to control it with my pedals. And then the type of overdrive that I like is more like a Santana I call it a singy type sound, where it sings rather than growling at you, that sort of thing. You go listen to Carlos Santana with that in mind, you'll hear what I'm talking about. That's really where my center of the universe is for guitar tone. And on that, probably about 20 years ago. I've tried some other things, but rejected most of them and said, I think I'm in my spot.
And that curiosity, the thought just occurred to me. Because of your background with playing jazz music, do you think you were more likely to not just be inspired by other guitarists, but be inspired by other instruments, other musicians, playing keys, playing horns and stuff, and thinking of, all right, how can I translate this to the guitar?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I credit that, all the influences, in addition to the rock stuff, the Ritchie Blackmores and Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page and all that stuff, I also, was listening to, I was interested in what St. Clair was doing, but also when the smooth jazz thing came out, and the Lee Ritenours and Larry Carltons of the world, George Benson's, all those came out, I was like, wow, that's a whole different way of doing kind of the same thing, well, not the same thing, but the same instrument.
Yeah.
When I went to learn, hey, these songs they're doing, they have a lot richer chord structure, and that kind of takes me back to the days when I was touring with St. Clair, and the keyboard player that was in that showed me all this. The world kind of opened up to me a little bit, and that became part of the gumbo that is my style. That was a big contributor to it. So.
Okay. Yeah. And so it had kind of just evolved from there.
Yeah, if you narrow your scope and limit what influences you, well, that limits you. So I didn't want to do that.